Hello and welcome back to another Today Years Old video. If you've seen some of my recent Entrepreneur Diary vlogs, then you might have thought that this traditional consulting career video was going away. Well, I'm delighted to share that that's not the case, and today we're going to be demystifying the consulting career path, and I'm going to draw it for you. So, what are we waiting for? This is like Bob Ross for consulting. Okay, now this first bit might look pretty obvious, but any organisation is a pyramid. At the top we have the CEO and the C-suite in general. Now, I should tell you that my drawing is pretty bad, that you can see that for yourself. Now, as you might expect, the more you go up the pyramid, the fewer people there are at each level. But what are the levels? How long does it take to get there? That's the subject of today's video. So the reality is we all start at the bottom. And in some companies, mine included, you join us as an associate. This is the bottom level in the company. And you then go to being an analyst. Now, some organisations bring people in directly at analyst level, and it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is these two levels are basically at the most junior in the organisation. Now, if you come in as an associate, how do you get to analyst? Well, some organisations, by default, you become an analyst just after being on the programme for 2 years, or another variation. It varies from different organisations. But in some firms, you have to actually pitch for your promotion to analyst, and Accenture is one of those. How long, on average, does it take to get from this level to that level? The answer is around 2 years. Always, you'll see people that do this quicker, and always people that are slower. But I would say 2 years is about average. What happens after analyst? Next you go to senior analyst. What's the difference between these two levels? Well, this will be the complexity and the how client facing the work you're doing is. You might, at senior analyst level, start to manage some analysts and some associates as well. So you'd start to be building your leadership skills. Again, some organisations do away with this altogether, and they skip this level and they hop straight to the next. And next up we have consultant. But if you're in an organisation where you've got analyst to senior analyst, how long on average does this take? This is probably another 2 years. Again, you'll always see people that do it faster and some do it slower, but that's probably about average. Now we talk about going to consultant. What's the difference between this role and this role? At consultant level, you are day-to-day client-facing, and you're probably leading a particular stream within your engagement. It might not be the most complex or the biggest one, but you're probably doing some kind of leadership, and you might have a senior analyst or maybe a couple of senior analysts or an analyst and some associates that report into you. So again, you would expect to do some line management by the time you get to consultant. How long does it take to get from senior analyst to consultant? I would say this is probably 2 to 2.5 years. What happens after consultant? Okay, this is where the variations start to come. In Accenture, we have a level called Associate Manager. In a number of other organisations, I see this being called something else. Senior consultant. But in essence, they are the same thing. Now I realised I've done a bit of a mistake here in the distance that I've given, but we're not here for a drawing class, fortunately. What is the difference between what an associate manager does and a consultant? At associate manager level, you would expect to be getting involved in RFPs, getting involved in some sales stuff. You're certainly doing some leadership, and your involvement in more of the commercial side of the firm is expected. And certainly you would be doing line management of some consultants or analysts and senior analysts. I like to think of this level as basically a training ground for being a manager. So this is where you're basically a mini manager, and you're certainly autonomously owning a particular work stream within any program that you're on. How long does it take to get from consultant to senior consultant or associate manager? Again, it can really vary. I would say that it is probably, on average, 2.5 to 3 years, depending on what type of program you're on, what your relationship with your stakeholders is like, many things. Now, my personal career journey is I actually skipped consultant and I went straight from senior analyst through to associate manager. And there are some firms, Accenture is one of them, that allows what we call a double jump or double promotion. I'll make a separate video about what that is and how I got one, but it is possible to jump a few levels. Okay, we're now at associate manager. Now, according to my diagram, if you're an associate manager, you're not far off the CEO, but the reality is very different. What happens after associate manager? Well, I think you pretty much guessed it, and we'll go to another piece of paper. In fact, we'll draw it over here now. So what happens after associate manager? Here, you become a manager. And just to avoid any confusion, we go over here. What is the difference between an associate manager and a manager? As you go up the levels, the difference becomes a little bit more subtle. As an associate manager, you probably would be getting some support from your senior manager and getting sort of a fair bit of guidance, especially initially. And you might be a bit involved in the finances, but maybe not owning them as such. By the time you get to manager, you need to be commercially aware, which means you've been involved in some sales activity, or you're starting to get involved in some sales activity. You have some experience managing the budget and the finances for your project. And certainly by the time you get to manager, you are going to be leading a number of associate managers, consultants, and beyond. So by the time you get to manager, your people leading skills need to be good. How long does it take to get from associate manager to manager? This is where the gap starts to increase. I would say that a good career progression is probably 2.5 years to 3.5 years. So then probably in the middle on the average, you'd have about three years at level. Again, there's always going to be people that will do it quicker and some much slower, but I would say this is probably about average. What happens after manager? Well, you're really guessing now. Senior manager. It's almost like there's a pattern to this, right? What is the difference between these two? So, a senior manager is definitely going to be selling work. They're going to have their own sales pipeline. They're going to be, here you're going to be kind of very client facing in your delivery role and starting to look at how you sell. But these are the people that really own the relationships and build the relationships with the clients. How long does it take you to go manager to senior manager? Again, it can vary. There are superstars who do it in 2 years. But you know what? They're very rare. So if you think that it's 2 years between every level, you need to park that. On average, most people do this in 4 years. There will always be those that are more, but I would say a pretty average is if you've been at level for about 4 years. What happens after senior manager? It can vary. We have in Accenture a level called Associate Director. Not every organisation has this. Some organisations may also call them Principal Consultants. But here's where it gets confusing. Some organisations use the term Principal Consultant to mean these people, associate managers. Some firms use it to mean these people, managers. And some use it to mean senior manager. So if you're moving around firms, it's really important that you consider what the job title means in the context of that organisation and what level it really maps to. What do associate directors do? These are effectively like a training ground for becoming a full-blown MD. Now, some people also call these vice principals. Though if you're in banking, a vice principal means something different altogether. So again, this is a title you should watch out for. Associate directors are really leading from the front on sales. They're providing their thought leadership out into the market. They're representing the firm at conferences and they are closing big deals. How long does it take to do senior manager to associate director? Again, this is where it really starts to vary, and as you go up the levels, the range of time it takes is ever increasing. Here, I think it's reasonable to say 5 years as a senior manager to an associate director. And after that, you get to a managing director. Now, these are the people that are going to be leading what we would call a DTE, some people call them departments. In Accenture, when you make MD, you get a special description in your profile. You get called Accenture Leadership, because that's what it's really about, being a leader in the consulting firm. Again, lots of companies will call them different things. So you might see them also called a principal. Or you might see them called just a director. Or you might even see them called president. And to be honest, what they get called varies hugely. So if you're thinking of switching organisations, make sure you know what you're signing up to. Then after managing director, there's various levels that get you up to being the C-suite. How much time between associate director and managing director? Again, this can really vary, but it feels like 5 years, 4 to 5 years, maybe 4 to 5 years here too as well, is about right. So, you want to get to the top of consulting. How long are you going to need to work for? 2, 4, 6, 9, we'll go conservative, 9. We missed one. 9, 11. 11 plus 4, 15. Let's go conservative and it rounds it up nicely. 20, 25. So how long do you need to expect to work for to get to MD? You should expect 25 years. There'll always be people who've done it quicker, and there'll always be those who take more time. But let's put this into perspective. 25 years might look like a lot on paper, but let's say you join the organisation as an associate age 21. That means that you're probably going to be an MD by the time you're 45. Well, if you think about the salary of an MD, by 45, given that most of us will retire at 65, that's great. And if you compare that to progression in industry, this is so much faster. Ultimately though, it's not about progression for progression's sake. You have to find the pace that's right for you, the levels that's right for you, and just do what makes you happy. I hope this video has been useful, giving you a bit of insight into the truth about the consulting career path. If it has, please give it a like, comment, share your thoughts, and of course don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more great consulting content like this. See you on the next one.